Good morning. I'm Larimer County Sheriff Justin Smith. We want to give you a little update on what we know with the fire, what it's done, and introduce you to the incident team that will be running the fire operations here over the next several days or weeks. The areas that I want to address a little bit with you this morning is the evacuations and what has happened to structures in the area. First, as far as evacuations, this is the first time in 2 days I'm going to tell you we're not actively doing evacuations in additional areas. What we're able to do at this point is focus on roadblocks. If there's one plea I've got to the community, please stay out of the area. It's created a lot more difficulties for the firefighters over the last 12 to 24 hours with people who with good intentions wanted to come see what was going on with the fire. Please stay back. We've got roadblocks in many places around here, really the same ones we had. I don't have any additions to add since yesterday, but we're maintaining the roadblocks. At our roadblock locations, we're trying to staff additional personnel because some of these residents, in their cooperation to get out of the area, had to leave pets behind, had to leave livestock behind. To the best of our ability, in cooperation and at the direction of Incident Command, we're getting some people back to remove some animals. There's some areas you absolutely cannot get to. So that's what a lot of our efforts are going with the Sheriff's Office right now. The difficult part I have to report is a little bit of a follow-up from your 9:30 briefing. We talked today when they were able to fly the fire last night, when some of the personnel came off, some of the fire personnel. We got some very bad reports from up in the Rist Canyon area. As you've heard, areas like Whale Rock, Davis Ranch Road, Stratton Park. For the most part, the fire has gotten into all of those areas, and based on interviews with fire personnel up there, we have good reason to believe there are 100+ structures within that area that are damaged or destroyed. When I say structures, we don't know if they're homes, we don't know if they're sheds, garages, etc. We're working right now to put an action plan together. We've talked to the residents. We hope by the end of the day tomorrow to have at least a plan together of how we will start putting those teams up there to assess what the damage is. One thing I will ask of you, I know there's all sorts of ways and technology available to get shots of what's burning in there. Please don't be the ones that show somebody their house burning, that show that foundation before we get a chance. It's sad enough for somebody to know their home burned. It's tough to get a call from somebody else that watched it on the news. I know it's difficult. I know there's a challenge to show up. If you can avoid things that would show those structures, it would show respect to the citizens of the area up there. We've got a certain amount of certainly active fire. I'm going to let Chief Dement talk a little bit about some of the efforts with Poudre Fire Authority currently, and then Bill Honenberg, the incident commander, is going to give you more specifics on the fire. What I got, and this is preliminary, is within that Rist Canyon, those 3 housing developments up and down Rist Canyon, they're giving me the number of 100. Understand that's a very rough estimate, and that certainly could be in addition to the approximately 18 that we had before. Just to address another thing is I don't know any news of additional cross of Highway 14 other than that area on the far east end where it crossed by Picnic Rock yesterday. We know it made a run up there. We have no structure assessment in that area. I have no new structure assessment in Poudre Park based on what we had before. We'll be working on that as soon as we can.
Okay, good morning. The fire that you're looking at over our shoulder is in the Mill Canyon, Soldier Canyon Estates neighborhood. Poudre Fire Authority has 10 engine crews in there working, both crews that have come in off duty as well as normally assigned crews. They had a firefight through there last night when the wind came through from the west. They put a lot of fire on the ground, did a lot of burnouts. They lost one structure up in there last night. I understand they've lost a structure this morning when the winds turned around and came out of the southeast. So that's pretty much what you're seeing there. Also in the Redstone Canyon area, we've got a lot of potential for fire. I'm hearing evidence that there's some fire in Redstone now. The good thing about Redstone Canyon, we have a volunteer station there that just does wildland. We've had 6 of those firefighters that have been on this thing for 36 hours. They were going to bed down. They're back up again, as I understand it. But what they've done throughout the past 5 or 10 years is do a lot of mitigation work, and I think it's a teaching moment to talk about that, with the mitigation work that they've done. It makes those structures much easier to protect. So we've got crews in there working as well in there. We've had another run yesterday evening. We had a run on Missile Silo Road. We had another run about 11 o'clock last night. We saved all those structures the second time through. We lost one the first time through. We don't know the rest of our area. Whale Rock subdivision is shared by us and Rist Canyon as part of that closing in of the horseshoe we've talked about, and we don't know exactly what's happened in there, and it's just going to take time till we do. So the good part is we've got the Type 1 incident management team that's helping us. We're still using our resources. They're bringing resources in, and I'll let our incident commander of the Type 1 team, Bill Honnenberg, address that.
As an incident commander, I lead a team of individuals experienced in these large wildland fires, and they're primarily from Colorado and Wyoming. So we're here to do whatever we can to limit the effects of this fire, limit the effects to public safety, and of course to structures, residences, and threats to the community. Over the next few days, we'll be staffing up, gearing up, getting organized to take this fire on, to deal with it as safely as we can with limited risk to firefighters and of course to the public. We're dealing with a situation here on June 11th where the measured local live fuel moisture in the conifer vegetation on the mountain is at 60%. Normally this time of year it'd be at 90%. So even though that fuel looks green, normally wouldn't burn this time of year, is burning very well. And that's why we're getting this aggressive and active fire behavior that we are. Then you mix the winds and the low humidity that we had yesterday, for example, we're going to have a lot of fire growth in this situation, in this terrain. So we're dealing with a very dynamic environment when we mix that dry fuel moisture, that dry fuel, this terrain, and these changing weather conditions. And then with the residences scattered throughout this countryside that we're looking here off to the west, that environment is going to cause us to evolve and adapt with the tools we have at hand. Currently, the numbers of people on this fire are around 400. That's in the process of growing pretty dramatically, where we'll be at 500 or 600 in the next 24 hours, and probably grow even more after that. We have 5 heavy air tankers. Those are the large retardant aircraft. We have 5 single-engine air tankers. That's the smaller retardant aircraft. Several helicopters, all engaged in applying retardant and water on this fire as we speak. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Chief, can you explain on a basic third-grade level what Type 1 means? Because obviously you guys live and breathe it every day, but the viewers may not know what exactly it means.
What a Type 1 incident management team is the teams that are trained and staffed to deal with the most complex wildland fires. Generally comprised of about 50 people, and of those 50 people we have individuals focused on a variety of things, the largest group being what we call the operations group. Those are the people that provide the organization to staff and lead the attack on the fire on the ground with aircraft and with engines and with personnel.
Where are you guys from?
Well, most of us are from Colorado and Wyoming. Many people experienced here in this Rocky Mountain area, and that's primarily where we're from.
Talk about the fuels some more. There's been some talk about the trees in the area. Are they hindering, helping? Do they have really any effect on what you guys are fighting?
Currently, most of the fire is not in the beetle kill. There could be just a little bit. As this fire moves west and north, and it may move west and north today into the mountain pine beetle fuels, the deader, drier, red needle affected trees, we may see even more extreme fire behavior, and all that fuel is extremely dry, very available for fire spread and growth. And it's also in a state where it's on the ground, but also that ground fuel allows the fire to carry very well underground and then get established in the ground. So if the fire gets established in that mountain pine beetle field to the west and north, that'll be a pretty dramatic fire event. It's actually lower priority for our firefighters today because that particular area west and north has fewer residences.
How confident are you in the resources that are battling this fire right now, especially with how quickly this fire is developing?
Well, these environments and these fire conditions are very difficult. Did you say confident?
Yeah, with the number of resources,
Okay.
especially with other wildfires.
We are a very high priority for the wildland firefighting resources available nationwide. I think we can get probably all the resources we want and need. That includes the Type 1 hotshot crews, very good at their jobs, the aircraft that are very good at this kind of firefighting, so as well as the engines. The local fire department engines have been very, very good at doing what they need to do up in the mountain, and we will continue to have them as part of our organization, as well as bring in wildland fire engines that specialize more in the attack on the fuels and the vegetation as opposed to structure protection.
Could you talk about where the fire is still?
Hang on here. Go ahead.
Could you talk about today? Are you still focused on structure protection, not even containment due to the conditions? Is that the strategy, and where is the fire believed to be headed?
Okay. His question is, what are we focused on today, structure protection, or actually a combination of things? The fire departments are engaged and focused on what they know and do well, and that's protect structures in their protection area. We, the more focused, some of the folks, the hotshot crews and the wildland fire engines, are focused on trying to construct line, in some cases burnout line. In these conditions, we're getting long-range spotting, so in some cases we have what we call an anchor or a contained line, and then we get long-range spotting and we lose it. So that's going to be taking place. So we're really focused on both things. And we're primarily focused today on the south side of this fire, all along that, what we call a flank, that south flank, due to the high presence of residences.
Is there any hope for containment today at all?
Yesterday we had a very small piece of containment at the heel, maybe 1 or 2%. I think we reported 0% because we were even a little uncertain about that. The hope for containment today, I will tell you, is tenuous, entirely dependent on weather conditions. We may be at 0 after today, and sometimes you just have days like that, and you regroup and you do it again tomorrow, and that's what we're here for.
Commander, in your experience, looking at this fire in only 2 days, 40,000 acres or so roughly, you feel optimistic that you can turn the corner on this thing relatively soon, in the relative term?
Actually, the weather conditions are a little better today and tomorrow than what they were yesterday. We're getting more resources in. We will make progress. This fire is actually just under 37,000 acres as of last night's high altitude flight, and it's going to continue to grow. We're certain of that. We believe we can affect it pretty well over the next 2 or 3 days to limit that growth, and as a minimum, direct growth into areas where there's only really the wildland fuels and the wildland environment as opposed to resident.
Sheriff, can you address at all the reports of the last 48 hours of the missing person? Have you confirmed missing?
A good question. The question of what we have with the missing person. What I can tell you right now is we have personnel starting that investigation at the location we believe we may have lost somebody, and that may take a significant amount of time, but we are at that location as long as conditions don't change and our fire folks have to pull us back out. They're starting the process, which should be a long drawn out process, seeing if there's somebody in there. So we got started. And I also want to touch the question about resources, and I know there's some wild rumors running around about aren't you getting the resources you need. First of all, this Type 1 team, I've got all the faith and confidence in the world. We've worked with them before. They're top notch. One of the things bringing this Type 1 team, Bill can tell you what they do. I can tell you what it means to the community. What it means is they bring in those 50 people. That's an asset to do everything at once and do it very structured and very well. That frees up our local resources to do the other pieces, to work back in and start looking at maybe what was lost. So by having these folks, it's not people trying to do 10 jobs at once. They lay out the right people with the right talent to make that happen. So it makes me feel a lot better. We're going to be able to start addressing more of the things that need to be done locally and regionally. Let me get Pamela real quick.
You said you're seeing if somebody is in there in terms of a missing person.
Yes.
Are you talking about a home or a cabin?
We're talking about a structure. I don't know enough about that structure, Pamela, to tell you what it was exactly, and I'm not going to speculate. But we have a burned out structure, and that's where most stuff indicates this person might have been. We did not find any signs of somebody in the surrounding area. Last that was known was this individual would likely have been within that structure. And the unfortunate part, when a structure burns, finding the evidence and remnants of a human body can be difficult depending on the fire. So that's a very slow process. I'm going to grab yours real quick. Okay.
Do you have a dog up there, or is it too high?
I don't. The first thing that they've got to do with the structure, first is make sure it's safe to get in. Secondly, is to make sure it's cool enough to work with. And as far as what those resources, I know that's a possibility. I just haven't had a chance. They just got up there today, or we're going up there. I don't know what they've done so far, but that's certainly a possible resource.
Sheriff, residents are frustrated. They say there's got to be technology to let me know whether my house is burned or not. The resident who had to be evacuated and saw flames coming and wants to know whether they have a house. What would you say to that?
With all due respect, I spent time with the residents. I'm very comfortable with that discussion that they've had. I understand their frustration, Chief DeMint, Chief Gant. We understand that when these fires go through, it takes a while to know what's in there and what burned. Having worked with people like Bill, knowing how these things are done safely, while pictures can come in, that doesn't tell you all that much. I don't want them to get bad information. Really, the only way to go through is house by house. The second part, and Chief Gant from Rist Canyon is a great person to explain this, but what was there 1 minute when he left may not be there. We do expect continued concern and frustration. We understand that with not being able to know. If this was a fire with 10 potential homes affected in a few hundred acres, the ability to get in might be relatively quick. And we're talking 36,000 plus acres and growing, and everything that's going on. It will take some time to go section by section and to get it accurate. So we know that frustration's there, but there's also been a lot of folks working with us being very understanding and knowing it's going to take a while.
CSU maps, there are these huge zones of beetle kill in the state. Some of them are several hundred square miles of contiguous zones. I was wondering if you're privy to any discussions at the state level about preemptively putting in fire control lines to break up these large zones and something more fire management.
Not specifically fire control lines per se, but I can tell you that many communities as well as the federal agencies have done a lot of what we call fuel reduction, where that fuel has been removed either through commercial timber sales or some kind of a mechanical treatment to try and limit the fuel buildup adjacent to facilities, adjacent to communities. Should a wildfire become established, it would give firefighters an opportunity to deal with that fire, and it would be less intense. And with that, I'd just like to add that if individuals look around their communities or their homes today, they might look at it in the same light, thinking it may be really important to deal with my property, my residents, remove the dead fuels, and make sure you have a defensible space as well as access for firefighters.
And you said that 400 to 500 people are coming, or 500 to 600 in the next 24 hours. Where are they coming from? Are they all local or coming from different states?
Okay, well, we have about 400 today, and it's a mix. Many, of course, the structure wildland, the structure protection engines are generally local fire departments, or at least Front Range and Colorado fire departments. Many of the wildland firefighters have really come from all over the place. The hotshot crews particularly are positioned all across the west and prepared to respond anywhere they're needed. So many of those people are from other states.
One last question, and then we need to get Bill back out and doing his work.
This fire is a high priority nationally, and you have more firefighters obviously coming, but are you happy with the level that you have today to fight this fire?
His question is, am I happy with the level of...
If not, what more do you need to fight this fire?
Okay. Are we happy with the level of firefighters that we have today? We can use more firefighters, and we expect them to arrive today and tomorrow. mean, some of it's simply travel times. You get to a point where you cannot safely use more firefighters. So that's where our operations folks are pretty good at setting priorities and learning, and have learned how to efficiently use the firefighters we have to take care of what's most important today and tomorrow, and then move those firefighters on to the next section of line as the fire evolves. So to answer your question, we're close to having what we need. We expect to grow over the next couple of days, and I'm confident we'll be able to get whatever resources we think we need.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. Nick?
Well, that's the briefing there with all the officials, including the last gentleman there, Big Bill Hannenberg. He is the incident commander. As we've said earlier this morning, this is now been taken over by the feds, essentially. This is the Type 1 team, and what that means is it's a more serious fire as they look at all the fires across the country.
He was joined by Justin Smith, the Larimer County Sheriff, and Tom DeMint, the Poudre Fire Incident Commander. What I gathered from this news conference, and we've been watching them over and over and over, Mitch, is that we now have the 100 structures that they've identified in Rist Canyon based on reports back from firefighters who've been up there into those steep terrain areas. 100 structures now lost. That's just in that one area of Rist Canyon. They're expecting the number of crews, they have 400 now, to grow to either 500 or 600 within the next couple of days. And they also expect the fire to grow, but they plan and they hope they'll be able to direct that fire's growth away from homes.